Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Fantasy Twitch podcast. This is a live streamed podcast focused on fantasy football from the Twitch channel of twitch.tv Bad Karma Lucky. We are live streaming this. It's how it's getting recorded on twitch.tv. We do have a bunch of people in chat that are getting ready with all of their fantasy football questions, which we'll be answering towards the end. For this episode, we're going to be going over the top 5 position players for each of the 4 skill positions, talking about quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. We're gonna go over last year's top performers, total points, and we're gonna go over this year's projections as well as some average draft positions. All of this data is going to be collected from ESPN. It's going to be based off of ESPN standard scoring, which includes point per reception. If you don't know what that is, it is 1 point for every reception a player gets, whether you're a running back or a wide receiver or tight end. If you catch football on a pass, you get a point. So we're going to go over that first, and then we're going to go into a question and answer section last. But before that, we do have a bit of an announcement to make. I've been talking it over with some of the subscribers of the Twitch channel, and we are going to make a fantasy football league for the Karma Crew, which is our community here on twitch.tv /Bad Karma Lucky. It is going to be a fantasy league that's going to be open to all subscribers of the channel. There's only going to be room for 11 teams to jump in, so it's going to have myself and 11 other teams for a total of 12 teams. It'll be a standard ESPN scoring format league, which will be PPR, and it's going to be pretty fun. We're going to decide who gets in. First, we're going to draw interest. If there's more than the 11 people that want to get involved, we're going to have to figure out a way to determine who actually gets in. So that being said, I have been announcing it in the Discord. We've been talking about it. We'll get more into it. It is going to be a subscriber benefit for joining the subscription, and it's going to be pretty fun. So figure out details over the next week or so, and we'll have more information on that during the next podcast episode. With that being said, let's get right into it, guys. All right, so here on the top right, you see top left, you see on the screen we have the top few players for each position. We got quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. First, we're going to start with quarterbacks. Now, it's sorted with 7 players, and I'll tell you the reason why. First, we went to the top 5 players based on points. So it took the total of the 2016 point total, and it was that. Then we went to the top 5 projections for this year, which is this column here, 2017 projection, and we found the top 5. Now, some of the players dropped out of the top 5. For example, Kirk Cousins here dropped out of the top 5. And then we had Russell Wilson sneak in. So want to go over this with you guys and talk about it. So one of the reasons why I want to do this is because past performance is an indicator for future positioning, future performance. It's a trend multiplier, right? So if you have a good year or 2, most likely you're going to have a good 3rd year or 4th year. It doesn't always pan out. It's not, tried and true, but as far as a guessing game goes, that's my basis for having as well of a good guess as possible. If I know a player has performed, 4 out of 5 years, most likely they're going to be solid for that next year, barring injury, trades, etc. So, with that being said, last year's top performer for total fantasy points was Aaron Rodgers, followed at 380 points. Now, again, this is based on ESPN's standard scoring format. So this is a league that provides 1 point for every 25 yards passing, 6 points for a touchdown, etc. This is 380 points for Aaron Rodgers. Then you had 347.5 for Matt Ryan, 332.3 for Drew Brees, 307.7 for Andrew Luck, 300.3 for Kirk Cousins, who rounded out the top 5. Now, one thing to take into account is this does not count for average per week. If you average per week, Tom Brady goes a lot higher. He only had 258.6 points, but he was out for the first 4 games. So that's something that you have to take into account. Typically, you want to go average points per week. However, anyone that drafted Aaron Rodgers got more value out of him than anyone who drafted Tom Brady. So if you're drafting players, the total points that a player scores for your team is more important than the average points per week. Keep that in mind. So you have that. Now, we go into projections, right? If we go into the top 5 projections, we now have Tom Brady sitting at 329.2 projected for this year, Aaron Rodgers at 327.8 for this year, Drew Brees at 311.8, Matt Ryan at 301.5, Andrew Luck at 299.8. Russell Wilson's right up there at 295.1, and Kirk Cousins dropped all the way down to 269.8. Not many people believe in Kirk Cousins. Whatever, right? All right, then we talk about average draft position. This is where you can expect to get the players. Right now, across ESPN mock drafts, Aaron Rodgers is going at 18.9 and Tom Brady's going at 19.1. So they're roughly at the same position, the 18th and the 19th pick in the draft. In a standard 10-team league, that's the second round. So everybody's drafting pretty much running backs first and then quarterbacks. So there's that. Now, what this tells me is if I have a 10 to 12 team league, I can expect to get a top 5 quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round. Look at that. So unless you get one of these two guys, you don't have to worry about getting a quarterback until the 3rd or 4th round where all these guys are available. If you're telling me that I can get Drew Brees in the 4th or 5th round, I'm pretty happy. You know, in a 12-team league, this is the 4th round. In a 10-team league, this is the 4th round. Bordering on the 5th round. So keep that in mind. If you're looking at who to draft when, this is an important indicator. They call this ADP, average draft position. Okay? Really important to know. Now let's move on to running backs. Now, as far as running backs go, the top performer last year was David Johnson at 407.8. Then you had Ezekiel Elliott at 325.4, Le'Veon Bell at 317.4, LaShawn McCoy at 298.3, DeMarco Murray at 293.8. Okay, if you go into projections for this year, they're sitting at 369.5 for David Johnson. It switches it up and goes Le'Veon Bell next at 369.2, then drops all the way down to 306 for Ezekiel Elliott. So they're expecting a drop in performance here, which I tend to agree with. LaShawn McCoy is sitting at 269.4 for projection, and then Devonta Freeman sneaks into the 5th spot at 258.8, whereas DeMarco Murray is expected to drop to 244.7. Okay, now the average draft position for these guys is Le'Veon Bell is averaging the 1st or 2nd draft pick. He's even higher than David Johnson, who's averaging the 2nd plus draft pick. So sometimes 1st, most of the time 2nd, sometimes 3rd. Whereas Le'Veon Bell is going 1st most of the time, sometimes 2nd, sometimes 3rd. So these two guys right here, and then this 3rd guy, Ezekiel Elliott, those are the guys that are going to be 1, 2, 3. Pretty much in every league. Most leagues, they're going to be 1, 2, 3. So you have to decide who you want to take. Personally, I'm going David Johnson 1, Le'Veon Bell 2, Ezekiel Elliott 3. And then you have LaShawn McCoy sitting at 9th. You have Devonta Freeman sitting at 12th. And then DeMarco Murray at 17th. So, compared to quarterbacks, which if we go back, we see the first one is taken at 18. In running backs, they're getting all taken before 18. So everyone's going running backs first. Still, even in a PPR league, everyone's still going running backs first. If you want a good, solid quarterback, you're going to have to spend your 1st pick on him. Possibly your 2nd. All right, now let's go to the wide receivers. All right, wide receivers. As far as the 2016 points, you had Antonio Brown, who led the pack at 307.3. Jordy Nelson at 304.7. Mike Evans at 304.1. Odell Beckham at 296.6. And then T.Y. Hilton at 273.8. Those are your top 5 for last year. You go to the 2017 projections, And they think, the experts think, that Antonio Brown's going to go 302.8. Jordy Nelson's going to go 283.6. Tied with Julio Jones at 283.6. Odell Beckham will go 276.5. And then AJ Green rounds out that 5th spot at 273.3. So you have a couple dudes that sneak in. You have Julio Jones that sneaks in, which is smart because he was injured last year a little bit. And then you have AJ Green that sneaks in over Mike Evans and T.Y. Hilton. Pretty smart, I think. I agree with these top 5. There's a few other guys that you can make arguments for, not named Mike Evans and T.Y. Hilton, that might creep into this top 5. There's always going to be surprises every year. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers on this list. And honestly, this is one of the most diverse and the most missed category in all of fantasy football, because there are wide receivers that nobody expects that always perform really well. Let's go to average draft position here. So Antonio Brown, right up there with Ezekiel Elliott, is getting taken at 3.9. So it's going Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, and then either Antonio Brown or Ezekiel Elliott number 3. Then you have Julio Jones at 5.9, Odell Beckham Jr. at 6.7, Mike Evans at 9.3, AJ Green at 10.6, Jordy Nelson's averaging 12th, and T.Y. Hilton's averaging 15.9. All of these are above the 18th slot. So still, you want to pick all of these guys before you pick a quarterback. Typically, people are going running back, then wide receiver, then quarterback. You can see in the average draft positions, all these are higher. Some of these guys are lower than some of the running backs. You have 12.1 there and 17.8 there. So you have these two that are higher than the other two. So keep that in mind, something that you want to think about. Wide receivers are very viable, especially in PPR leagues. You can spread that skill gap out. It's that's the benefit of point per reception. You don't have to rely and live and die on the performance of your running backs. All right, let's move over to tight ends. All right, leading the pack last year was Travis Kelce with 223 points. 209 points from Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Olsen had 207.3. Jimmy Graham had 189.3. Delaney Walker had 188.1. One thing I want to point out here are these point totals are way below quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. So you can definitely tell that the tight end position is a lot less viable and important than those positions. Let's go to projections here. Greg Olsen is projected to be the number 1 tight end this year at 225.3. Rob Gronkowski is going to be 223.6 based on experts' opinions. Jordan Reed's rounding up third with 222.1. Travis Kelce drops down to 215.7. Al Rudolph goes 190.4. So he rounds out the top 5. The other two, Jimmy Graham is expected to drop quite a bit to 169.5. And Delaney Walker is expected to go down to 164.7. Now, when you're talking about average draft position for these guys, Rob Gronkowski is by far the most popular tight end. He's the one that everybody wants to pick up. His average draft position is 18.7. That is lower than the 6th or 7th quarterback. If we go back, we see that, or excuse me, that's a little bit higher than the first quarterback, but lower on all the other tight ends here. 35 goes lower than these ones. Okay, so tight ends and quarterbacks are getting selected about the same time. Strange to me, but that's pretty close to how it goes. So right now, if you're in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round and you have a choice between Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Rodgers, personally, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people are taking Rob Gronkowski. And then you have Jordan Reed at 35.3. You have Travis Kelce at 41.5. Greg Olsen at 43. And then it starts to dip way down. Delaney Walker at 64.5. Jimmy Graham at 70.2. Kyle Rudolph at 73.6. What this tells me, especially these three here, is that you can get your quarterback, running back, and wide receiver before you ever have to pick a tight end. Me personally, with my strategy, I'm going quarterbacks and running backs and wide receivers, multiple, before I go tight end, because I know that I can get a decent tight end who's going to be top 10 in that category within those last few rounds. So typically I'll want to get 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 quarterback before I ever go tight end. A lot of people, when they want the top guys, they'll do that before they get to that point. If you want Rob Gronkowski, you gotta go 2nd or 3rd round. It's gonna happen. You're gonna have to select those at those positions. So, one thing to know is my recommended advice: go running back, then go wide receiver, then go either running back again or quarterback, and then pick a 2nd running back, a 2nd wide receiver, and then go tight end. That's what I would recommend. So, average draft position, when you're looking at all the players that you want to draft and you're preparing for your draft, which is the most important piece of your fantasy football year, definitely check out not only how they've performed in the past, but how they're expected to perform this year and what they're being drafted at regularly. Now, if you know that Greg Olsen, if he's a target of yours and he's being drafted at 43 and it's coming up on the 43rd pick, if he's not drafted yet, you know you're going to have to get him at that point because it's getting close. Now, if you have a guy that you really want and you're at pick number 30, but he's being drafted at 40 or 50 plus, don't reach for him. The worst thing that you can do is reach for a player. Don't reach for players. Go for players that are best at that value. For example, if you're in the 2nd round and you can get Odell Beckham Jr., do it. Okay. If you're at pick 12, 13, 14 and you can get Odell Beckham, definitely do it. Same with Mike Evans, AJ Green, those guys. Okay. If you can get them in a round later than they're being drafted at normally, that's ultimate value. If you can do that for every single one of your players and you can get value for every single one of your players, that's the way to go. Who cares what they did last year or what they're expected to do next year? It's all about that average draft position. Obviously, if everyone's drafting him, AJ Green, around the 10th spot, and this is mock drafts and actual drafts that are happening. This isn't just someone's randomly suggested draft position. This isn't experts' opinion on where they think it's going to be drafted. This is ESPN's actual mock draft data, or when the drafts begin, actual draft data. The average draft position for AJ Green amongst all people that are actively doing it is 10.6. So everybody is universally agreeing that this is the 10.6 best player to draft, essentially. If you can get this player at 11 or above, that's a good spot to get him at. Don't reach and try and go for him at 2 or 3 or 4. Try and get him there. Okay, that's kind of how you should do this. But yeah, other than that, that's kind of what I wanted to go over. Is definitely get value for all of your draft picks. Pay attention to average draft position and go for that. Go for value. Get value picks. If you're in the first 3 or 4 picks, a lot of people are going to say, hey, I have the first pick in the draft. Who should I get? I have the 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 5th pick in the draft. Who should I get? My advice, if you have the first pick, go David Johnson. If you have the 2nd pick, go Le'Veon Bell. If you have the 3rd pick, go Ezekiel Elliott. The 4th pick is kind of rough. Some people go Antonio Brown. That's not a bad choice at all. Some people are going to go Julio Jones. I would probably say 1, 2, 3 would be these 3. 4, 5 would be these 2. 4, 5, 6 maybe would be right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's probably what you're going to see a lot of the times. Some people are going to reach and they're going to pick Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady in the first round. I think that's a mistake. So there's all that information for you. I base all of this on the ESPN information. Essentially, you can go to the ESPN fantasy football pages and you can look at all of the data for all of the players. Not a hard thing to do. They have all the information there. ESPN's a great resource. I use it quite often. It's actually where we're going to do the fantasy league. So again, guys, for all the subscribers of the Twitch channel that you can find at twitch.tv/badkarmalucky, we are going to have a fantasy football league. It's going to be a 12-team PPR league based on ESPN standard rules, and it's going to be on the ESPN resource. So all of this information is going to be there for people to use. That being said, we're going to go over to a question and answer section. So if there is anyone that has any questions, definitely put them in chat right now. And I'm talking to the Twitch chat. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you won't be able to see it except for we'll put it right there in the top left window. Now you guys can see it. All right, so let's see what we can find. What app are you using to do this? This is a spreadsheet, so I'm on a spreadsheet that I created. So I took information from the ESPN resource. I put together a spreadsheet based on the information I want to display, and that's where I'm going with that. If you're talking about recording software, this is all being done on OBS, which is Open Broadcast Software that streamers use to stream their stuff on Twitch and other resources as well. Too many numbers. I have no idea how to do this fantasy football thing, but I want to join just to play with Carmen. WP for Inbound. Anyone that wants to know what fantasy football is or how to play it or get an idea of what it is, go ahead and when I post the first episode, check that out, because that's what we talked about. That's what we focused on. We wanted to tell everyone what fantasy football was and how to check it out. So definitely I'll post the information on the Discord and in the chat and stuff if you guys want to check it out. Let's see. Ezekiel Elliott is rumored to be suspended for an unknown amount of games. How many games would he have to be suspended before you think he should drop in the ranking? Personally, if he's going to be out at least one game, I'm not going to select him at that position. I'm going to drop him down instead of at the third pick, probably fourth or fifth pick. But most people aren't going to drop him unless he's out 3 or more games. I don't think he's going to get suspended, though. As far as I'm aware, the police haven't pressed any charges, and until they do, the NFL probably isn't going to do anything. Don't think they're going to suspend him at all if he's not charged with anything or arrested in any way. So most likely he won't. If he does, it's going to be 1 or 2 games, and I don't think you should probably risk a number 3 pick, wasting that on someone when you can get Ezekiel Elliott. I would say most conventional wisdom would say select him number 3 or 4 if you have the chance to, even if he's out for 2 games. What is a good fantasy football app? It depends what your league is on. If your league is using Yahoo to be played on, use Yahoo's app. They're pretty solid. Yahoo, NFL.com, and ESPN are my favorite resources to play fantasy football on. All of their apps are pretty solid, so definitely check those ones out. So what's the order of positions should you pick in? I would recommend go running back first, because these 3 guys here, if you look at their average draft position, you have 1.9, 2.2, 3.9. Those are the top 3 highest average positions. Then you move over to wide receiver. This one's actually tied. Antonio Brown's actually tied with Ezekiel Elliott. And then you have Julio Jones and Odell Beckham Jr. So I'm recommending going running back, then wide receiver. You could probably go running back again after that if you have a chance to get a good one. But after the first 2 rounds, it's really up in the air. You can go running back, wide receiver, running back, or you can go running back, wide receiver. It kind of all depends. I wouldn't recommend reaching for a quarterback. Definitely not for a tight end, defense, or kicker. Quarterbacks you can get in the 2nd round if you want Aaron Rodgers, sometimes Tom Brady. Other than that, look at these positions here. 37. In a 12-team league, that's still the 4th round. So unless you want one of these 2 guys, you don't have to reach for them. Even then, if I have a chance to get Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady in a 3rd round, I'm taking them. If I have the choice between them or picking up Odell Beckham Jr., Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, I'm probably taking the wide receiver or the running back. Just because there are so many quarterbacks. Look at the points, okay? Let me show you this. Aaron Rodgers scored 380 points throughout the whole season. That was by far and away better than any other quarterback in the league. I mean, that's 33 points higher than Matt Ryan, or 32.5. Now, if you take that in the context of 16 games, 32 points, that's 2 points per game. 2 points per game. That's not much. So the difference of drafting Aaron Rodgers at 18.9 and drafting Matt Ryan at 19.4, with the average projection right here, 26 points. That's fewer than 2 points per game. That's not much. I would rather get a running back or a wide receiver and then take Matt Ryan later on in the draft. That's what I would recommend. DeMarco Murray had a great year last year, but at Murray's age and with Derrick Henry behind him on the depth chart, would you still take him around the average draft position of top 12 to 15 overall pick? Yeah, well, he's at 17.8. That's at the tail end of the second round. I think that's a solid position for him. Personally, if I have the choice of him or, say, Jordy Nelson, I'm taking Jordy Nelson. It depends who's around him. It's always going to depend who's remains. If everyone's picked the bones of all of the other running backs and wide receivers and DeMarco Murray is the only one left that's in that range, I'm taking DeMarco Murray. I don't fear his age very much. I think he'll be just fine. And if they do spread the ball out, he's one of those running backs where he needs to get carries and they need to have a good passing game for him to be good. He's not going to break a ton of tackles. He's not going to take it outside of the tackles. If they don't have a good passing game, they just load the box up, DeMarco Murray's not going to be great. So they definitely have to have a solid passing game. I think they've improved their passing game in the offseason. So I think that he'll actually be pretty solid this year. I think he'll be pretty solid this year. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for episode 2 of the Fantasy Twitch. You can find us on YouTube. I'll drop the links in the Discord as soon as that is uploaded. And for everyone that's watching on YouTube, feel free to join the Twitch channel at twitch.tv/badkarmalucky. Join us on Twitter at @badkarmalucky, and also join us on Discord. You can see the link on the left side over there, and you can see that in the description on the video as well. So make sure to join us there, and we will see you next time. All right, 43-20. All right, guys, hold on one second. I'll keep answering questions and stuff. I just wanted to